This is the story of Corporal Jake Mitchell and his 800-mile journey across enemy territory to expose the truth. Iraq, 2006, Forward Operating Base Falcon. Just outside Baghdad, the war was at its bloodiest, with insurgent attacks happening daily. Corporal Jake Mitchell was a 22-year-old communications specialist from Ohio. Good soldier, clean record, trusted by his unit. But on the night of October 15th, while running routine maintenance on the radio tower, Jake witnessed something that would turn his world upside down. What he saw wasn't just corruption. It was treason that was getting American soldiers killed. Picture this. You're 30 feet up on a radio tower, fixing equipment, when you hear voices below. You look down and see your commanding officer, Captain Reynolds, meeting with 3 Taliban fighters. Jake watched in horror as Reynolds handed over a crate of M4 rifles and ammunition. In return, the Taliban gave him briefcases full of cash and something else. Pure Afghan heroin worth millions on the black market. But then Jake heard something that made his blood freeze. One of the Taliban fighters spoke in broken English. "Your information about patrol routes, very good. Many Americans die." Reynolds wasn't just selling weapons and buying drugs. He was selling intel that was getting Jake's friends killed in ambushes. Jake tried to climb down quietly, but a piece of equipment slipped from his belt and crashed to the ground. Everyone froze. Reynolds looked up, his eyes locking with Jake's. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Reynolds calmly said to the Taliban fighters, "Kill him. Make it look like an insurgent attack." Jake rappelled down the tower faster than he'd ever moved in his life. Bullets sparked off the metal around him as he hit the ground running. He sprinted through the base but quickly realized the horrifying truth. Reynolds had backup. Other soldiers were in on it. The base's PA system came alive. "Corporal Mitchell has gone rogue, armed and extremely dangerous. Shoot on sight." Jake's own unit was now hunting him. The people he'd trusted with his life were trying to take it. Jake had minutes before the entire base would be locked down. He needed transportation, weapons, and supplies. He sprinted to the motor pool where his friend Sergeant Williams was working on a Humvee. "Williams!" Jake gasped. "Reynolds is selling weapons to the Taliban." But Williams just stared at him with dead eyes and slowly reached for his sidearm. Even Williams was compromised. Jake grabbed a wrench and knocked him unconscious, then stole the Humvee and crashed through the base's main gate. But Jake's problems were just beginning. He was now alone in the Iraqi desert, 800 miles from the nearest uncorrupted American forces in Kuwait. Behind him, helicopters were already taking off. Reynolds was mobilizing everything to hunt him down. For 3 days, Jake played a deadly game of cat and mouse across the Iraqi desert. He abandoned the Humvee when it ran out of fuel and continued on foot. He had one advantage, his communications training. Jake knew how to avoid surveillance, how to move without being detected. But on day 4, Jake discovered something that made his situation even worse. He wasn't just being hunted by corrupt Americans. Reynolds had put a bounty on his head. Every insurgent group in Iraq was looking for the lone American soldier.
Roger that.
Jake spent that night hiding in a bombed-out mosque. listening to helicopters circle overhead. He was exhausted, dehydrated, and running out of ammunition. That's when he made a decision that would change everything. If he couldn't reach American forces safely, he'd have to find another way to get his message out. Jake still had his emergency radio. It was risky, but he managed to make contact with a war correspondent in Baghdad, someone outside the military chain of command. The journalist Sarah Chen was skeptical at first, but Jake had evidence, photos on his phone, radio intercepts, even Reynolds' bank account numbers. "Get this to the Pentagon," Jake told her. "Reynolds has been selling weapons for months. Every ambush in Sector 7 was because of intel he provided." But as Jake was transmitting the evidence, he heard something that made his heart stop. Vehicles approaching. A lot of them. Reynolds had found him, but he wasn't alone. Jake counted at least a dozen soldiers, all armed, all prepared to kill him to protect their secret. Jake had minutes before they breached the mosque. The transmission was only 60% complete. He had to make a choice, run and save himself, or stay and finish sending the evidence. Jake Mitchell made the choice that defined him as a hero. He stayed. As soldiers surrounded the mosque, Jake kept transmitting. 70%, 80%, 90%. The first breaching charge blew open the mosque's main door. Jake dove behind the altar, still clutching the radio. Reynolds' voice echoed through the ruins. "Mitchell, you've caused enough trouble. Come out and we'll make this quick." Jake looked at the radio. 95%, 96%, 97%. Bullets shattered the ancient stone around him. Jake was hit in the shoulder, but he held on. 98%, 99%. 100%, transmission complete. Jake smiled, even as Reynolds and his men closed in. The truth was out. The evidence was in the hands of people who could stop this. What happened next was like something out of a movie. As Reynolds raised his weapon to finish Jake off, the sound of helicopter rotors filled the air. But these weren't Reynolds' helicopters. These were FBI and military police responding to Sarah Chen's evidence. Within minutes, Reynolds and his entire network were in custody. The corruption that had been killing American soldiers for months was finally exposed. Jake was airlifted to a German hospital where he recovered from his injuries. The investigation revealed that Reynolds' network had been responsible for over 30 American deaths. Reynolds was sentenced to life in prison. 12 other soldiers were convicted of treason. The Taliban drug pipeline was shut down permanently. Jake Mitchell was awarded the Medal of Honor for his courage. But when asked about it years later, he said something that showed his true character. "I didn't do it for medals or recognition. I did it because 30 good soldiers died because of Reynolds' greed. Their families deserved the truth." Jake's 800-mile journey across enemy territory wasn't just about survival. It was about honor, courage, and the belief that some things are worth risking everything for. Today, Jake works with veterans organizations, helping soldiers who've witnessed corruption or abuse. His message is simple: Sometimes the most important battle isn't against the enemy in front of you, it's against the betrayal behind you. Jake Mitchell's story reminds us that real heroes aren't the ones who follow orders blindly. They're the ones who stand up for what's right, even when it costs them everything. If this incredible story of courage and sacrifice moved you, smash that like button, subscribe for more amazing true stories, and let me know in the comments. Would you have had the courage to do what Jake did?